in to Married at First Sight, Season 16, Episode 15. And my name is Deborah, and I'm going to be doing the recap review of all the individual couples. I do them one by one, as separate videos. And at the end of each video, you can click on the link above around my head, and you can go on and watch the next video. And I'll also include the links down in the description and the chat box. Please don't forget to like and subscribe this video, and absolutely drop down in the comments and let's talk about everything I said and everything you watched on this episode. So let's go ahead and start talking about Kirsten and Shaq, and I'm calling them a Mr. and Mrs. Picky. I talked about this early in the season, that these two were made for each other. I said that they were two peas in a pod, they were twins. And as we're seeing more and more as these episodes go on, they are absolutely twins. These two have so many things in common. They're really the same people. And now here we are, it being shown right here that they are Mr. and Mrs. Picky. Like before, nothing that Shaq did was good enough for Mrs. Kirsten. And now we're finding out nothing that Kirsten does is good enough for Mr. Shaq. Mr. and Mrs. Picky, they really are made for each other, because nobody else wants to put up with this. Nobody else wants to put up with nothing that they do is good enough for them, and they always want you to do more. I've mentioned so many times, I got tired of listening to myself, that Kirsten's pickiness in the very beginning, because she went first, her pickiness was because she wants the person to do more. The pickiness is never to push you away. The pickiness is to draw you closer and to ask you to do more and more and more and more, because they're never satisfied. Well, Shaq's no different. I did that little parody video that I told you guys about, that many of you watched, where I said Shaq got exactly what he asked for. And even Dr. Pepper said that Shaq can be picky. Well, there you go. That's why I didn't have too much sympathy, empathy for Shaq, because he got what he asked for. And the truth of the matter is, he is just as picky. Just as picky. He's just as hard to please as Kirsten is hard to please. Now we find out that these two have been knocking boots for a long time. Now let me tell you something. On the after party, Shaq is on the after party, and he clears up that not only have they been intimate and consummated their marriage as he announced to the world, they did it a long time ago. Long time ago. So now you got to play back in your head, and you got to ask yourself, what's the big secret? Why do you have to keep it a secret? You know why Kirsten, I'm sure it was Kirsten who wanted to keep it a secret. You know why Kirsten wanted to keep it a secret? Because like I told everyone before, Kirsten likes to drive up her price. Kirsten likes to have an outside package that you view her as, but on the inside is something completely different going on. Kirsten didn't want you all to know that she and Shaq were doing the wild thing. They married, so what's the big deal? What Kirsten wanted you to keep believing was that she don't really like Shaq, and his bald head is unattractive. And I don't know, I kept telling people long before it had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with his bald head. I even said that Kirsten does like Shaq. I knew that Kirsten liked Shaq, because Kirsten kept trying to make Shaq work harder and harder for her. That's what it was all about. The put downs, the telling you what I don't like about you, is just to extract more from you. And now we got this episode, we got Shaq doing the same thing with Kirsten now. And nothing she says or nothing she does is good enough for him. So he sits back and he becomes picky so she can work harder and harder for him too. I'm telling you, these two are made for each other. I really don't know who else would put up with them besides the two of them. They're actually good for each other, because what they actually do is they actually hold each other accountable. They hold each other accountable. They don't let each other get away with anything. I mentioned very early on in the season that it was very clear that Kirsten's love language is acts of service. That's her love language. Even last week when she was getting into the whole masculinity thing, if you really listen to what she was talking about, what she was saying was she was judging him on what he does. Those are acts of service. She didn't feel like he did enough. He didn't take enough leadership. He didn't carry her groceries. He didn't open doors. Sometimes people say that's chivalry. Sometimes that says people, he isn't thoughtful enough. He isn't considerate enough. But when you look at all of her complaints about Shaq, It really is about doing, acts of service. And what did Shaq get on Kirsten about this week? Acts of service. You didn't go with me here. You didn't go with me there. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. And it isn't, the point isn't that they both don't have points, that they both don't have valid points. But the problem is it is relentless. It is relentless, and nothing is ever good enough. In and of itself, some of the things that they asked for, besides the $2.9 million house, some of the things that they asked for aren't necessarily so crazy and ridiculous. The problem isn't the things that they ask for. The problem isn't that. The problem is that they're constantly asking, constantly needing more, and nothing you do is good enough. I applaud Devon Franklin. Devon Franklin, this episode was very, very good with a lot of the couples. They should have put him on long time ago. But what Devon Franklin keyed on this week was Shaq. Kirsten did it too early in episodes, but what he keyed on with Shaq is it diminishes what people are already doing for you when you're picky. That's what he got to. He says when you are a picky person, you discount what they've already done and you tell them that's not good enough. I want more from you. And that's what Shaq did this week to Kirsten. Everything she did, he nitpicked it. He didn't give her credit for the parts that she did, and he said it wasn't good enough. It's the same thing that Kirsten did to Shaq early in the season. It wasn't good enough. But behind closed doors, she really does like him. She really is trying to draw him near. She's doing all the things to get a yes out of him on decision day. And she's not telling you that they knock boots. Why? Because she's got an image to uphold. She wants to appear virtuous. She doesn't want anyone to know. What's wrong? You're married to the man. What difference does it make? And I don't want to hear anything about this is a Haley and a Jacob repeat from seasons before that the D wasn't good. No, it was good. She liked it because they've done it more than once, and I know they have, and she's happy. That's why she's over here trying to make him happy, because she did it, she liked it, and she does like Shaq. I knew that from the beginning. This had nothing to do with she wasn't attracted to Shaq. I know how a woman moves and shakes when they're attracted to a man, and I know a woman when she's trying to make a man chase her more because she wants him to chase her because that means he would do more for her. Kirsten is love language is acts of service. And the way you get a person continue and do acts of service is you keep telling them that what they're doing is not good enough, so they keep trying and doing more and more things. But they're two peas in a pod. They're two peas in a pod. We find out on the after party, you'll have to watch my video on that, but that whole weekend getaway that Shaq was all upset about was more than a conference. It was the big, it's not homecoming, but it's like that HBCU football game. It's a big deal. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of activities. So for Kirsten not to want to go to that or not go to that had nothing to do with Shaq didn't have enough plans. That might have been it too. She wanted more plans. Once again, a picky, it's not enough. He said he had a hotel room. He had things like that. What more does she need? She needed the whole itinerary laid out. Like I said, the invitation, a hotel room, and a plane ticket was not enough. She needed the itinerary of what are all the things we're going to do, what are all the things we're going to go to. Like I said, she needed more. And so then she stayed home and she planned that party with the friends. He says it wasn't that he just didn't want to take her to show her off. He wanted to do that too. He absolutely loves showing off Kirsten. That's another reason he likes her to go. This ain't no take your spouse to work day. Everybody doesn't bring their spouse to work as many times as Shaq keeps talking about. He does want to show Kirsten off. He does want to show everyone, look at my fine wife. He does, because they're all for show. They love to have an image. They love for you to look at them a certain kind of way. And let me tell you, this whole big fiasco at the little Cowtown, what is it, line dancing thing, where Miss Nicole is getting in everybody's business. We'll talk about that on the Nicole and Chris video. Be sure to check that out. But when Nicole is over there telling Kirsten what she needs to do in her marriage, and then speaking for Kirsten on behalf of Kirsten with Shaq, and then Kirsten is over there, mum's the word, and she's silent, and then Shaq goes out the room because he doesn't like her response. It wasn't good enough. And she says, but I was rubbing your leg, I was rubbing your back, I was showing you nonverbal support by touching you and being close to you. And what does he say? Oh, that's not good enough. I want you to open up your mouth. Well, let me tell you why Kirsten was so stunned and why she couldn't open up her mouth. Because when Shaq was telling the story of, You know what? I used to be that person where everything on the outside seems perfect, but on the inside, I'm chaotic. Does that ring a bell, people? Does that ring a bell if any of you have been watching my videos all season? Does that ring a bell when I told you that Kirsten, on the outside, she looks proper, she looks perfect, but on the inside, she's chaotic? Does that ring a bell when I told you when we saw that apartment of hers and the apartment was clean and pristine, but the closet was chaotic? I said Kirsten on the outside is like this, but behind closed doors it's chaotic. Does that ring a bell when all she talks about is how her father provided and took care of her and her family, and he was the leader in the family, but we find out he left the family at 7 years old, and then we look at the house he provided, and it's really a very, very modest house, but what she tells us is not what we see? Does that ring a bell when she tells us she's a daddy's girl, but her daddy doesn't show up to the wedding? The daddy doesn't even want to meet the man that she's sleeping next to in the bed every single night, but she wants to present this image that she's a daddy's girl, and her father is just, they're so close and he's so involved in her life and all this other kind of stuff, but he ain't even on a phone call. And when she does talk to a parent on the phone, it's not even her own mother, it's now Shaq's mother. Have we even seen any of Kirsten's family members besides the wedding? Does any of this ring the bell when Shaq starts talking about on the outside it looks perfect, but on the inside it's chaotic? Does it ring a bell when I talk to you about Kirsten baking these cookies at the original open house? And I said, as a person who is in real estate, if I walked into a house and I saw an agent baking cookies, I would say, what smell are you trying to cover up in this house? I don't want no baking. I don't want no cookies baking when I come to look at a house, because I want to be able to sniff that house. And I want to be able to know if there are any smells in the house that I don't like. Maybe some mold, maybe some fungus. I don't know. I don't want no cookies distracting me from what I'm here to do, which is to investigate and look at this house. But Kirsten wants the aroma of cookies going through the house. Does any of this ring a bell of a picture perfect scenario, but chaotic on the inside? When Shaq was telling his story of this is what I used to suffer through. Shaq, you didn't used to suffer through it. You still suffer through it. You might have gone to therapy. You might have gotten help. You might be better, but it's still there. But that's okay. It's still there, but you need to acknowledge it. And Kirsten, she's one step below Shaq because she doesn't even acknowledge it. She doesn't even acknowledge it. So when she sat there next to her husband and she heard him talking about how he used to be prim, proper, perfect on the outside, bow ties, put a bow tie on it, but behind closed door, it's chaotic. She couldn't even open her mouth because she was stunned. That's what I'm going to say. I don't think it was because she was insensitive. I think it's because she was stunned, because here her husband was talking about something that so resonates with her, she couldn't get any words out. Kirsten was stunned. I don't think it was a lack of empathy. I don't think it was a lack of sympathy. I think it was an overwhelming amount of her resonating with her husband. In that moment, she didn't even know what to say or what to do. And like she said, when they got outside, he was so quick to get up and run outside. She was like, dang, I didn't even get a minute to think. And what she was saying was, I didn't even get a minute to gather myself, because those words stung me so hard. I couldn't even focus on your pain because you were hitting so close, so deep in my own heart. I had to recover myself first. That's what I believe about Kirsten, because these two people are the same exact people. I said it from the very beginning. I said it from the very beginning, since that matchmaking special, even Dr. Pepper called it. She said that he can be picky, and we found out very early on she was just as picky. And the two of these people, what they like to do is they like to nitpick on each other, nitpick of what's not good enough, because what they want you to do is more and more and more and more. That's what they really don't. They're not trying to push you away. What they're really trying to do is draw you near, because drawing you near makes you do more acts of service. And the more acts of service you do, the more they feel loved. Remember when Shaq said he felt like his mama was never there for him? Remember that? Remember when Shaq would always tell Kirsten that I felt like my mom wasn't there for me that much, maybe because her mom had to raise the kids by herself. She had to work, but he felt like she didn't do enough for him. He needed more love. Well, now he is over here trying to get that love from Kirsten. And now we got Shaq's mother telling Kirsten he needs more support. Well, probably the reason why he needs so much support is because he felt he didn't get it in his childhood, and now I got to make up for it. That mama better think a little bit about what she's talking about. She better think about a little bit what she's talking about, because she's talking about how Kirsten needs to give Shaq more support. But some of this stuff comes from his childhood. And now Kirsten is like, dang, how much support do I need to do? Yeah, I've made mistakes here and there, but goodness, I thought I was improving. I thought I was doing more, but it's still not enough. No, just like what Shaq does to you, Kirsten, is not enough. Is a modest 2-bedroom house enough for you? A modest 3-bedroom house? No, you want a $2.9 million house. But you know, the thing you don't ever really hear these two talking about or what they're going to do. They're really good at asking things from each other, but they're not really good at necessarily wanting to do a whole lot of things for each other. And that's what they call each other out on. Shaq wants this woman to go around with him to his job and be the arm candy and all that, all his office events. Like I said from the very beginning, he wanted arm candy. If I hire you to be the arm candy, you missing these events, Kirsten. That's what he's saying. I got married to you because I wanted arm candy, and I'm not getting what I want because you ain't going nowhere with me to be my arm candy. That was the point of things. He told Dr. Pepper he wanted arm candy. That's what he told her. You got Shaq over here complaining about what Kirsten isn't doing enough, but then when Kirsten asks something for Shaq, talking about buy me a house, do this, he says we should be doing it together. They're two peas in the pot. They got a whole list of things they want you to do, but the minute you ask something to them, they tell you, oh, that's too much. Why are you asking me for all that? These two are tit for tat. They're going to be tit for tat in a marriage. But you know what? I still say they're good for each other. You know why they're good for each other? Because if any one of these two gets with a person who says a giver, a person who's a real giver, what will happen is they will extract and extract and extract. And that giver will keep giving and giving and giving. By the time the giver figures out what's going on, they will be so depleted. They will feel like this person took so much from me. I have nothing left, right? That's what would happen. But the fact that these two both know how to ask, come tell you, every single episode, they asking for something. Ask. They need to teach Jasmine over there. Jasmine don't know how to ask for anything, but these two over here, between Kirsten and Shaq, they know how to ask all day long. And when they don't get what they want, they both pout. And they both try to extract more and more for you and tell you what you need to do more. They two peas in a pod. 2 peas in a pod. I can't believe all this time they've been actually doing it. I don't even know when they maybe done it. I know when we saw that whipped cream and she was doing all that gyrating and dancing and she was talking about, oh, this is turning me on. I know what happened before then. Because like Shaq said on the after party, it happened very early in the marriage. He said very early in the marriage, and they've been doing it ever since. It wasn't a one-time hit, one-time wonder. No, they did it. Kirsten liked it. And whatever his interests are, she's been satisfied with it because she's doing all she can to keep him in the game. And she's doing everything she can to say, you worrying, don't be worrying about nothing, or we going to be just fine. She's been saying it for several episodes. She's perfectly comfortable with the bedroom action. So everybody who was talking about, well, Shaq can't put it down and Shaq can't do this and all this other kind of stuff, he's not masculine enough. Well, guess what? He's good enough for her. And all this other stuff, when she was calling him last week, he's not masculine. That's not what she really should have used. Those weren't the words. Because even though she's got a bachelor's and a master's, Kirsten doesn't really know how to say things correctly. What she was really saying is she wants him to do more. And what you're really finding out is they both are asking each other to be the parents that they didn't have. Shaq over here said that his mother wasn't really there for him, didn't do as much for him as he wanted. Now he wants a wife that does that, makes up for what the mama didn't did. Kirsten wants us to believe that her daddy did everything, but now we know he didn't. We know that daddy didn't do everything. And now what she's looking for is a man to do not only more than what her daddy did, not only what her daddy did, but even more. These two are asking for things. They act like they're accustomed to it and used to it. At least Kirsten is. And the truth of the matter is they're not accustomed to it. They both would drain a person. I could see how after a while people would walk away from Kirsten. They would be drawn to her because she's very good looking. She's very cute. And then she would ask and ask and ask. And after a while, they would just quit. They would just say, Kirsten is like a job that continually wants you to work overtime. Nothing you do is good enough. And you say after a while, this job ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. And you pack your bags and you go. And Shaq, because he's the male and he's probably the one that does more of the hunting with women, the women can do a whole lot of things for Shaq and they won't be good enough. And he'll be like, well, I like you, but you still don't do these things. And so I'm not going to actually choose you and pick you. This is why these two were single before married at first sight. It is their pickiness, their insatiable need to be pleased and people to do things for them. So they're never, ever satisfied. It's written all over the wall. All over the wall. Now we find out Shaq is even talking about, well, I was upset because, I'm not graduating on time with my PhD. And she's like, while I was helping you, I would check in on you and ask you, are you getting the help you need? Maybe he did need some help and maybe he needed to go over and talk to someone else. He probably blamed somebody else too for not getting his PhD. Talking about probably something he should have received from somebody else that he didn't get, so he didn't finish his work on time. Boy, Shaq, get out of here. Get out of here. When that mama was talking to Kirsten and telling her you need to be more supportive, she didn't even really have no real specifics because all she hears from her son is saying that she's not supportive. She's not supportive. I need more. I need more. She didn't even give Kirsten no real specifics besides not going on this trip. That's what I'm saying. Some of this stuff that they do is very, very, very nitpicky. Very nitpicky. Just like we said with Kirsten in the very beginning, it seems trivial. It seems, why are you making this big deal over these small things? That's what I'm talking about. They are both very, very, very picky. And I don't call that, I know a lot of people want to classify Shaq as being, oh, he's sweet, he's got sugar in the tank because he's picky. And they're so-called viewing that as a feminine trait, that pickiness is a feminine trait. No, it's not. Lots of men are picky. A lot of women don't realize that they're not chosen because picky men came upon them and those men didn't choose them because those men were picky too. That doesn't necessarily mean you're sweet because you're picky. Kirsten is picky and so is Shaq. It has nothing to do with the fact that so-called a Shaq wants to swim in another tank or another swimming pool. I don't believe any of that. I don't believe any of that at all. Never have. Even before they spilled the beans that they had actually consummated the marriage and they didn't even want to tell then. And everybody up here is trying to give them advice on this whole Memphis trip. Everybody getting invested and these fools over here are running game, lying to everybody for the last month and a half. And Eris said, well, what if you would have told her, pack your shit, you going? Eris, get out of here with your advice. And Kirsten looked over at him and said, no, I wouldn't want it to be said like that. That's a little bit too much. But I do sometimes need a more leadership. What she was saying was, it wasn't what he said, it was what he does. See, Eris was thinking that what she needed was to be told what to do, to be a more assertive and say, do this. But that's not what Kirsten really needs. Kirsten doesn't want to be told what to do. Because oftentimes Shaq tried to tell her what to do and she didn't want him to do that. She doesn't really like that. What Kirsten wants you to do is do more. So Kirsten said it correctly. It wasn't that I wanted him to say, I pack your shit and you going. What I wanted him to do was say, I got the hotel, I got the plane ride. This is how we're getting to the airport. When we're there on day one, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to this ball. We're going to go to this party. And then we're going to have dinner here. And then we're going to do this. Kirsten wants you to have planned everything and have done everything. You hear my words? D-O-N-E. Done. Not talk. Done. Her love language is not words of affirmation. Talk. Her love language is do. Don't just tell me, do it. And if you haven't done it, it doesn't count. That's who she is. So, Eris, get out of here with that talking about, oh, maybe I just need to come up here and tell you to pack your shit. And she shut it down real quick. She said, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I need. Like I told everybody, let me tell you, Eris and Kirsten would make a horrible couple. Horrible couple, because Aries don't do anything either. Like Kirsten said, Shaq's talking about he's not getting support. Kirsten said, well, I feel like I give support. She told Devon, I feel like I give support. I do this and that. You do give support, Kirsten. It's not good enough. Just like what Shaq does for you is not good enough. It's not a matter of do either of you do anything. You both do things, but you don't appreciate what each other does. What each other does for each other is never good enough. You guys all want more. And Devon Franklin got to it. He said that is a life you eventually grow to resent each other, and it diminishes what each other has already done. And that's why I said about picky people. Picky people diminish what you've already done. It's not good enough. It actually invalidates people. It actually makes people not feel accepted. And let me tell you, that doesn't work on everyone. A lot of people, what they do is when you don't appreciate what they do, when you don't validate the things they've done, what they go to is they just stop doing anything. When you say you're not doing enough and they think they're doing a lot, they don't keep trying harder and harder. Maybe in the beginning they do, but after a while they say, well, hell, if you never really gonna appreciate anything I do, then I might as well not do anything at all. If every time I do something for you, you tell me it's not good enough, then what's the point of trying? Why do anything anymore? That's what you get to with a partner. I bet you, Kirsten, if she looks back at her dating life, there were men who were very, very eager in the beginning to please her. Very, very eager. They probably did a lot of things to please her. They liked her. They might have loved her. And then probably what she noticed in the relationship was it started to fall off. She started to get less and less. And what she's thinking is, why did he stop doing things? The reason people stop doing things is because they calculate in their head and they say, when I do A, B, C, she still complains that I don't do D, E, and F, right? So I never get to a place where I'm accepted, where I'm appreciated. So if I'm still never going to be accepted and appreciated, why do I even do A, B, and C? So that's what starts to happen. They stop doing C, then they stop doing B, then they stop doing A, then pretty soon, you're right. Your words now are correct. I don't do a shit for you. That's what it starts to look like. You're right. I don't do anything for you. Not anymore. Not anymore, because you didn't appreciate and you didn't validate and you didn't put any value to what I was doing before. So now I don't do shit. That's what I know. That's what Kirsten's dating life looks like. I absolutely know it. And Shaq's dating life looks at women tried to be there, tried to support him, and he always had a complaint. He was very picky, and in the end, he didn't want to be with them. He let them go. He didn't accept them. He didn't want to be with them. That's what they look like. That's what their dating lives looked like before they were put here in this Married at First Sight experiment. But that's it, y'all. Be sure to watch my other videos, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.